Yes.
But afterwards, how would you characterize your relationship?
Came when she saw to it, I didn't.
Formally.
Oh, I don't know. You know, Rosanna Brazzi was in this film, and he's done 87 films. Did you know
Yes,
that?
80 of which we haven't seen over here.
There are some secrets a star never speaks, and others they leave behind like a wound carved into paper. When Joan Crawford's estate was finally opened, long after the cameras had stopped rolling and the glamour had faded, the people closest to her expected jewelry, photographs, scripts, and letters from a life built on Hollywood perfection. Instead, they found something else, something colder, sharper, and far more revealing than any artifact from her golden years. It wasn't an object. It wasn't a confession. It wasn't even a scandal. It was a choice, a deliberate act of silence, written in ink, that cut deeper than any headline or rumor ever could. And for the first time, the world was forced to confront the truth. Joan Crawford had spent a lifetime hiding behind elegance, discipline, and control, a truth she refused to explain, even in death, because behind the sequins and the steel, behind the immaculate persona that Hollywood demanded she maintain, Joan carried an emotional burden so heavy that she couldn't put it into words. But she could put it into her will, and what she left behind would haunt her family for decades. People would say they were shocked. Others would insist they saw it coming. But no one, no co-star, no studio head, no fan, ever truly understood the depth of what Joan was holding inside. Not until they read the one line that shattered everything. And yet that line was just the beginning. Because hidden suffering never sits quietly. It leaves traces, in choices, in silence, in the things a person withholds when they feel they are no longer fully seen. So the real question isn't what Joan Crawford left behind. It's what she endured long before she picked up the pen. And what that will uncovered was far darker than anyone ever expected. But what had driven her to it? What pain had lingered long enough to follow her into her final instructions? And why did she choose silence as her last word? The answers were waiting, buried deep inside the estate she left behind, and once uncovered, they would change everything the world thought it knew about her. They say Hollywood shaped Joan Crawford, but the truth is far more complicated. Hollywood didn't just shape her, it demanded she erase anything that didn't fit the image it needed. And for decades, Joan complied with a level of discipline that bordered on survival. Behind the studio gates, she lived in a world where perfection wasn't praised, it was expected. Every smile had to be rehearsed, every appearance orchestrated, every flaw sanded down until nothing raw or uncertain remained. But the cost of becoming Joan Crawford was simple and devastating. She had to disappear to keep her place in the spotlight. The tension began long before her estate was ever opened. It lived in the quiet spaces of her life, the places cameras were never allowed to see. There were the dressing rooms where she sat alone while reporters waited outside, expecting glamour while she fought the exhaustion she never admitted. There were letters she wrote but never mailed, largely about her fear of fading, her fear of becoming replaceable, her fear that her carefully constructed world would one day collapse. There were the scripts she studied until sunrise, long after others had gone home, because she believed effort could keep her from being forgotten. And there were the moments the public never sensed, the nights when her eyes no longer met their children's, not out of cruelty, but out of the internal war between the mother she wanted to be and the icon she was required to remain. People saw the makeup and the confidence, but they never saw the strain. Whispers circulated even while she lived, unconfirmed stories about a woman who held her household to impossible standards, rumors about tension with her older children, speculation about the psychological wounds she carried from her early career. None of it was ever proven, but the rumors shared a common thread. Control wasn't vanity for Joan, it was protection, because in her world, losing control meant losing everything, and the studios pushed that fear deeper. They reinforced the belief that she had to be sharper, more disciplined, more immaculate than anyone else. It was a silent contract she signed every day. Perfection first, humanity second. But behind closed doors, the cracks deepened. There were the strained holidays that ended abruptly, the caretakers who quietly noted the pressure simmering beneath her elegance, the friends who said she grew quieter with age, as though holding in something too heavy to release. Even her closest confidants couldn't reach the part of her that never stopped bracing for disappointment. By the final years of her career, Joan Crawford lived in two completely different worlds. In public, she was the legend, polished, collected, unbreakable. In private, she was a woman holding herself together with rituals, rules, and walls built so high that even love had trouble getting in. And when her health began to decline, the pressure didn't ease. If anything, it hardened. She had spent a lifetime preparing for people to judge her, misunderstand her, rewrite her story, so she took control of the only thing she felt she still could, her legacy. This was the part her children didn't see coming. This was the part the world misread. This was the part that would send shockwaves through Hollywood after her death. Because the will she left behind was not simply a legal document, it was a map, leading straight to the heart of her hidden suffering. The silence in her home, the strain in certain relationships, the choices she made, and the choices she refused, it all pointed to something deeper, something she could not say aloud while alive, something she believed would only be understood when she was gone. And when the estate executors finally opened the sealed documents, when they read the lines that had been prepared in private without explanation, when they reached the section that made them stop, look at one another, and read it again, they realized the tension that haunted Joan Crawford in life was about to spill into her legacy, because what she left behind wasn't just shocking, it was a message, one that the world still struggles to interpret. And it was only a matter of time before the emotional weight she carried alone would become public. Something was about to break. There is often one moment in a star's life when the facade becomes too heavy, when the image the world worships no longer reflects the person struggling beneath it. For Joan Crawford, that moment didn't arrive on a film set or in a courtroom or during a public scandal. It arrived in the quietest place imaginable, her own home. As the years went on, the tension inside the Crawford household grew thicker, denser, harder to ignore. She had been the anchor, unyielding, disciplined, determined to maintain order in a world that was constantly slipping out of her control. But even anchors eventually sink under enough weight. Her health began to decline, slowly at first, then with a rapid shift that startled even those caring for her. The once dazzling Hollywood force grew physically weaker, and the internal suffering she had carried for decades began rising to the surface in unexpected ways. She grew quieter, more withdrawn, more protective of the few things she felt she still had power over. For some, this was simply aging. For others, it was something much deeper, an emotional exhaustion that had been waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Her relationships with her children reflected this shift more than anything. While some remained loyal, supportive, and close, others had long felt the friction between the woman they wanted her to be and the woman she actually was. The emotional distance widened, conversations felt strained, visits grew shorter. Her caretakers noticed subtle changes too, her insistence on privacy, the way she paused before signing documents, the heaviness in her eyes when certain names were mentioned. These were not the signs of a woman acting out of anger or impulse. These were the signs of someone carrying wounds that had never healed. And yet Joan did not speak about the heartache directly. She never explained the rifts that formed in her personal life. She never defended herself, nor did she apologize. Instead, she held everything inside, every disappointment, every betrayal, every fear of being misunderstood. She let silence speak for her, because silence had always been the safest language she knew. But the breaking point came in a single decision, not dramatic, not loud, not visible to the world until after she was gone. It came in the form of ink, a few lines in a legal document that would one day make headlines and spark debates across Hollywood and beyond. Because when Joan Crawford sat down to finalize her will, she made a choice that stunned even those closest to her. She deliberately disinherited 2 of her adopted children, not with explanation, not with justification, simply with a line that read, in essence, "I leave them nothing," for reasons well known to them. This was not a rumor, this was a verified legal reality, and for many, it felt like a final fracture, a moment where all the hidden suffering, all the emotional tension, all the unspoken wounds became visible in one stark, irrevocable act. Those few words revealed more about Joan's inner world than any interview, any memoir, or any tabloid story ever could. They hinted at conflict, disappointment, and unresolved pain she could not bring herself to articulate. Some whispered theories, some gentle, others harsh. But speculation is all it ever was. No proof, no definitive explanation, only silence and a wound that echoed long after her death. The public saw a scandal, her family saw a mystery, but those who understood Joan's private suffering saw something else entirely, a woman trying to reclaim control over the parts of her life that had caused her the deepest hurt. And once those lines in her will were discovered, everything changed. The image of Joan Crawford, the glamorous icon, collided with the truth she left behind. It was not a confession, it was not revenge. It was simply the moment her silence broke in the only way she knew how. From that point forward, her legacy would no longer be defined only by her films or her fame, but by the emotional earthquake that came after she was gone, and nothing, not even Hollywood mythology, would ever be the same. In the quiet hours after Joan Crawford's death, when the flowers began to wilt and the reporters finally drifted away, the people closest to her were left with the task no one ever prepares for, opening the remnants of a life that had always been larger than it seemed. Her estate was small compared to the fortunes of other stars from her era, but that wasn't the surprise. Joan had never lived for opulence, she lived for order, she lived for control, and that control followed her all the way into her final instructions. The will itself became the centerpiece of her legacy. Two of her adopted children, Christina and Christopher, were deliberately excluded with the now famous line, "For reasons well known to them." Those words echoed like a final, unspoken confession. Some read them as cruelty, others read them as sorrow, but to those who studied Joan's life closely, they revealed something far deeper, a woman who died holding on to wounds she could not articulate. The will wasn't the only thing discovered. Among her belongings were meticulously organized files, receipts, personal notes, and carefully arranged documents. Nothing was out of place, nothing left to chance. Even in death, Joan maintained the discipline that had defined her entire existence. No diaries were found that explained the family fractures, no secret letters revealed hidden resentments, no confessions waited in drawers or boxes. Her silence remained unbroken, yet the absence of explanation was, in itself, a kind of revelation. For a woman who had spent her entire life trying to outrun pain, poverty, rejection, judgment, scandal, silence had become her last form of protection. What she didn't say became the space where her truth lived. What she withheld became the clearest reflection of the suffering she never believed others would understand. Her loyal daughters, Kathy and Cindy, received the inheritance. They were stunned, not because they felt victorious, but because they knew the public would interpret the decision in ways Joan would not have been able to defend. They spoke gently, carefully, avoiding insults or accusations. They described their mother as complicated, disciplined, private, and deeply wounded by the pressures around her. Their words painted a portrait that didn't align with the headlines. For them, Joan wasn't a monster or an angel. She was a woman navigating survival, the only way she knew how. The two disinherited children, however, had their own experiences and their own scars. Christina's book, Mommy Dearest, published shortly after Joan's death, ignited a storm of controversy. Some saw it as truth, others saw it as anger. Many considered it a mixture of both. What mattered most to the public was not who was right or wrong, but that the story itself widened the mystery around Joan's private life. Christopher remained quieter, sharing less, choosing silence over spectacle. Their estrangement from Joan was real, documented, undeniable. But its root causes have never been definitively proven. Interpretations vary, motives remain unconfirmed, and the tension between perspectives became part of the legacy she left behind. But what truly haunted people was not the decision itself, it was what the decision suggested. Joan Crawford had been admired, feared, adored, and criticized in equal measure. She had been shaped by a brutal Hollywood system that demanded transformation at any cost. She had survived by constructing walls so high they remained standing even after she was gone. And in choosing to leave behind a will that carried more pain than wealth, she revealed the emotional architecture she had spent her life trying to hide. More documents from her estate filled in the emotional landscape. Tax returns showing financial strain from years of trying to maintain the appearance of stability. Contracts reflecting the fierce battles she fought to stay relevant. Letters from friends and colleagues who described her as lonely, disciplined, resilient, sometimes unreachable. These pieces didn't form a scandal, they formed a portrait of a woman who never stopped fighting battles no one else could see. Her home itself told a story too. Rooms where the curtains were kept drawn, closets perfectly arranged by color, tone, and season, a kitchen organized with military precision, all signs of someone who felt safest in environments she could control. Everything she touched bore the imprint of someone trying to impose order on an inner world that had long refused to quiet down. And then there was the funeral, small, understated, dignified. Too dignified, some said, for a woman who had lived such a grand public life. But maybe that was the point. Maybe Joan Crawford knew that in the end, all that remained was the truth she carried privately, truth she never explained, never softened, never surrendered. When people look back at her estate, they don't just see a legal decision, they see a lifetime condensed into one final act. They see the weight of expectations that shaped her. They see the fractures that fame deepened rather than healed. They see a woman who never escaped the shadow of her early struggles, even as she built a legacy out of elegance and grit. What they found in Joan Crawford's estate did haunt them, but not because it was sensational. It haunted them because it revealed the kind of suffering that goes unseen until the moment someone is no longer here to carry it. It haunted them because it forced the world to reckon with the cost of becoming an icon. And it haunted them because, in the end, her silence spoke louder than any confession could have. For decades, audiences believed they knew Joan Crawford, the star, the legend, the myth. But the woman behind the myth left her truth in fragments, a line and a will, a pattern of silence, a legacy broken into pieces only those closest to her could interpret. Some secrets fade with time, others remain etched in the spaces a person leaves behind. Joan's suffering, hidden, guarded, rarely acknowledged, endures in those spaces. And in the quiet after her estate was read, one truth lingered. The world knew the star, but only a few ever knew the price.